Hello and welcome to the show and welcome to a new series. I'm going to be doing a Canyon Rally time trial series on BeamNG Drive. I've actually been wanting to do a tarmac rally for quite some time. It took me a lot of searching to find a road that I liked, and this is the one that we have gone for. Starting at the end of a bridge, we have a long climb up towards the first corner. Going to test the car's acceleration. Turn 1 is a nasty bugger. While it is a relatively small kink, it is the very crest of the hill. The fast cars are going to be getting airtime here, so he's going to test suspension when it comes to the landing and so on. Yeah, it's a really nasty first corner. Turn 2 is equally challenging. Once we've got over the crest, it is a downhill, very bumpy and curved braking zone. And one of the rules that I'm going to have for this series is the cars are going to be run with no assist. So I'm going to be removing the stability control, traction control and ABS. So not locking the brakes up into that second corner is going to be a big important thing. Turns 3 and 4, little bit more straightforward, getting through this elongated S-bend, and then we come to the big jump on the course. While I said yes, this is a tarmac road, there is still a rather sizable jump. As you leave this bridge, the speed the cars are going to be carrying and the steepness of the road, there's going to be some airtime. It's all going to be about finding that right speed for a car to get a neat landing and maintaining as much speed as it can up towards another very nasty braking zone. Very, very bumpy, quite narrow section of track. We then run into a very deceptive kind of hairpin. The corner starts opening up before very quickly tightening around those barriers. Very difficult to see as well at that part. So that is another corner where you can get into trouble. We have a tiny little dirt section on this course. Nothing for the cars to worry about too much, although there are a couple of bumps that can throw vehicles out. We then have a long straight in towards another big braking zone for possibly the tightest corner on the course. This hairpin as we go through the rock face. A very impressive looking corner, and then once we're out of there, it is on to the final section. Long, fast, flowing corners. While yes, they're nowhere near as tight as the turns earlier on, the cars are going to be hitting some seriously high speeds. And keeping the vehicles on the track through these turns is going to be potentially challenging. After all, one little mistake at the sort of speeds you're going to be going, especially when there are trees, there are rocks, there's this great big cliff face around the place. You get things a little bit wrong, you're going to have a tremendous accident down this section. The finish line is when we get to this little bit of Armco barrier. So that is the course. Yes, it is all tarmac, but it is certainly one hell of a challenging circuit. The first vehicle to go would be the Covet. Now, I figure this would be a good place to start. Of the kind of the base game vehicles, about any vehicle that I use for this course, I'm going to be using the fastest version that I can. And naturally have gone for the Covet Rally, and I will be choosing, if I have the option to, choosing rally suspension, because while yes, we don't have dirt stuff to worry about so much, there are still some hefty bumps and even a couple of airborne moments. So we're going to be going for rally suspension where we can. And this seemed like a decent vehicle to start with. Despite the steepness of the hill, the Covet actually gets up to a pretty solid speed, although as we sort of go over the crest of turn 1, get a little unsettled on the landing, trying to get the car slowed down for the next corner, and we managed to go around for a rather neat spin. In all honesty, with that one. This was always likely to be one of the problem areas while I was trying to figure out what speed I could take. Flat out, it doesn't quite work, as we bounce off the ground a little too much from the nose there, as it twists and turns, and the boot gets stolen by a sign. The car does eventually come to a rest. Getting the landing right there is probably the toughest bit. Amazingly, the Covet's still working. While the steering's a bit broken, okay, very broken, the actual car was still working okay. So it was back to trying to find that right speed. It was better. We were much closer on this next attempt, but still just that little bit too fast. The landing jolts the car about, and we get spat out to the side. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do a rally series on Beam, certainly the crashes are a damn sight more spectacular. This was a case of I very nearly got the car stopped before we went tumbling off the mountainside. But much like the previous rally series, the Downhill Chaos series and so on, this course is narrow. When things go wrong, there is a good chance you're going rolling down the mountainside. So I was trying at different speeds, this time 63 miles an hour, and that would work. The Covet would get a lovely smooth landing, but then we have to stop it into the next corner. Didn't quite realise how much of a brake was going to be needed. I almost got it, but a bit too long of a lockup, and the Covet would just go skating off. I would save it before it ended up in the water, and once again the car was actually working. Got it beached on the dirt there, but the car was still working. Having got the hang of the earlier sections, we were now running further into the course, coming up towards the hairpin for the very first time. Might have turned in a smidge too soon there. Just clipped the tiniest of dirt banks on the inside, and that would be the Covet rolled and on its way down the mountainside, amazingly to become another flag. I don't know how I've managed to do this, but this is the official flag of FailRace, by the way, a car sticking out of a tree, but I couldn't believe I managed to get it perfectly done once more. Maybe a fraction too much speed on this next attempt across the landing of that jump there. Definitely going to be one of the hardest bits to get right with any vehicle, and as the car bounces around, we go climbing up a rock face. Got the jump right on the next attempt, got the car just about slowed down, but turned in a fraction too soon for the next corner. And, well, you can't go corner cutting when the rocks around there will just roll your car. Again, the Covet would still work from that, but that is very much run over. Also found a nasty bump on the outside of the course as we came to this very high-speed section. Did not know there was a bump there as I moved across to take the optimum line for the next corner. And hitting that bump at 100+ miles an hour was enough to unsettle the Covet. And when you're unsettled at these kind of speeds at this part of the track, it was always going to end in disaster for the poor little rally car. That was like a big surprising crash. I wasn't expecting the car suddenly to go over at such high speeds. Another very high speed roll, not hitting the bump this time, but just trying to carry speed. The sort of inside of that corner is slightly banked almost, and it was just enough to get the front wheels to lift off the ground, and then that was it. Once it was started going, there was nothing that could stop the Covet, and a fraction too much oversteer again put me out wide while I was trying to correct it, and that led to a huge tumble as well. Certainly in terms of spectacular crashes, this course I think is going to make for a great series. The Covet actually survived that particular one really well. Unfortunately broke a driveline that would stop the car from running. Yeah, it took some practice really to get the hang of this course. As you would expect, before I kind of went to film this, I did have a few runs practicing with a sunburst just to kind of get the hang of the track a little bit, and to decide on the circuit I was going to use for this series. So I did know the course a little bit before jumping in to the Covet. I'd got the hang of the crest. You could be flat out over the crest with the Covet. It would have good enough suspension to deal with the landing, then get it slowed down. These corners not too bad. You've just got to watch for that understeer though, especially in a front-wheel drive car. Very easy for it to start dragging you wide. It is flat out up towards the bridge, but a little dab on the brakes. I actually carried a lot of speed over it that time around. I thought I was going too quickly. We get away with a little bit of a lucky bounce off of the nose of the car, and it does get settled coming towards these next couple of corners. A little bit of a bugger to get the front end turned in. You've got to be careful not to boot it just yet, because the corner does tighten up once more behind that bush across the dirt section. No issue whatsoever for the rally Covet as we come towards the hairpin. Now, trying to get the braking right for this corner was a tad difficult. I was braking very, very early on a lot of occasions. It's not as bumpy as the previous braking zones, and locking up is not such a big issue down there. We've got it around the hairpin cleanly this time, though, as we now run towards the fastest corners on the track, avoiding the bump first on this run around. I do turn in actually a smidge too soon, and that does unsettle the car on its way through here, but most importantly we keep it out of the walls, and that was key along this section of track. The Covet is through the high-speed stuff and across the line. A good suited car for this kind of event. The suspension coped very, very well with the demands of this course, and while yes, it's certainly going to be nowhere near the most powerful of cars, it is relatively small, relatively light, which does help it with the especially sort of the initial hill climb. I was trying to get some reverse donuts going on, but it wasn't particularly it wasn't particularly keen on it. Once again, the problem with some of these cars and running with manual gears and an automatic clutch, the cars are not always too happy about it. The next vehicle to take on the course, complete almost opposite end of the spectrum to the Covet, the ETK 800 series, four-wheel drive estate car. Most powerful engine again that I could find shoved into to this one. Of course, considerably larger, considerably heavier than the Covet. Gets off the line, as well as you would expect from a four-wheel drive vehicle. Now this, I didn't really know quite how it was going to manage. I just went flat out, tried to take the same line that I had with the Covet, and there's too much speed in the car. You're going far too fast as you crest that section that you're just going to go soaring off the course. So flat out, not quite an option. Also, I dabbed the brakes while I was in midair, and that made things worse because the front end dipped, and yeah, that made that particular crash 10 times worse. So again, it was all about trying to find what speed I could get away with. 95 miles an hour was better. However, this car not quite so capable on the landing. As you might expect from a road-going estate car as opposed to a rally vehicle, it could not quite deal with a 95 mile an hour impact. The back end would just bounce around. Now, you could potentially get very, very lucky. The engine still worked amazingly after all of that, but everything else was, well, pretty much wrecked on the car. So yeah, I had to kind of get used to taking a little slower speed across the initial crest. And this jump, well, things went very wrong on my first attempt. I'd actually got a twitch coming towards it, and then we're fighting the car trying to get it sort of in a straight line to leave the jump. That was never ever going to end well for the ETK. Did manage to, again, around the 65 mile an hour mark is where you wanted to be. Well, this guy has so much acceleration. I kind of booted it after the landing, and that made me very quick into the next corner, which isn't good. Not good at all, because that is a horrible, horrible braking zone. It's almost as bad as the braking zone down into the second corner here. And yeah, that was too much for the ETK. Even when you are being sensible across the speeds of the jump, things can go a little bit wrong. I did just about save the car, but again, we were too late on the brakes. Just too much momentum coming into that braking zone, and the ETK would have all manner of issues. It was proving to be a bit of a tougher challenge, really, to get things right. This crest at the top of the course was causing scary moments for the car as we ripped the front bumper off, and surprisingly, this is a little bit of a strange one. The front bumper gets ripped off, actually goes under the rear wheels and smashes all the suspension to bits at the back of the car, hence the failure out there. Coming to the high-speed section, turning in a little too soon is a very spectacular flip from this incredible flip from the ETK. Yeah, I turned in too soon, hit some bumps, and at that speed it's going to get launched. Amazingly, the car was still working. I could actually drive it to the finish line, despite God knows how many rolls in all of that one. All the wheels had remained on the car while the radiator was destroyed. It was surprisingly working. The sort of the dirt section with this car was something you had to worry about. It wasn't quite as smooth across there as it had been with the Covet, and if you got it wrong, you would be launched into the air. And again, we go for a good number of rolls. Once more, the front bumper coming undone, causing the front bumper sort of falling off, then going under the wheels, causing me to go slightly sideways. And then there's no margin for error on this course. While it is a smidge wider than we saw from Mount Chiliad, the speed and sometimes the difficulty of keeping these cars under control means that even though it is a little wider, still one little mistake and you are going to have a massive, massive accident. So we're talking about more like 80 miles an hour across the crest at turn 1 if you wanted to get everything nicely under control. I did put up the little graph to show the kind of the pedal uses, the throttle and the brake, to just show how much work is having to be done with the brake to try and stop the car locking up. You have to be so unbelievably careful with the brakes on here when you turn ABS off. It is very, very tough to stop these cars from locking up. I actually carried massive speed over the bridge this time out. I haven't realised until just watching that then how much speed I was taking. That probably shouldn't have worked at 70 miles an hour across there. We do land heavily on the nose. The radiator's damaged, but it doesn't matter. The radiator's going to hold to complete this course. I'm not too worried about the damage. We do have to have a little lift coming through the dirt section. The Covet was fine flat out through there, but the ETK just can't quite deal with the bumps. We get a little bit of a lock-up. It's fighting to get the car slowed down for the hairpin. Very much slide our way through, and the front bumper comes off. Fortunately, it all comes off cleanly and is going to be left at the hairpin for me to go and complete the run, getting up to some good speed down this section, 119 miles an hour, but going to have to slow down. It's not flat out. Up here is a little bump on the inside to cause you some problems, but we are through the course. Got to be careful not to get too far across to the left there with that hill, but the 800 series is through cleanly, and we are across the line. As I try and get on the brakes, I get a bit of a twitch. I get a slight lock-up, and then can't quite get it under control, and we may have found a rock to bump into. Yeah, that's slightly broken the the side of the car. It wasn't in great condition anyway before that, with missing a lot of the front end from the brush at the hairpin, but that didn't help matters. Once again, though, the car was in working order. This thing survived a hell of a lot of punishments and me trying to turn it around. The reverse didn't really work properly once more in this car. Basically, crazy turbo cars in reverse, I don't think crazy turbo cars, reverse and manual gears don't seem to like one another. I was going to get the car turned around again just to sort of show off the damage on it. Yeah, it survived relatively well, and that run put it through quite a lot. Some heavy landings from the main jump there, and it was still good to complete the course. The final vehicle to take on the Canyon Rally would be the Lancia 037. You can't go wrong with a Lancia when it comes to rallying. However, it is rear-wheel drive. So we had a front-wheel drive rally car, the four-wheel drive estate car, and now a rear-wheel drive rally car to take on the course. Rear-wheel drive, perhaps not ideal for some of these turns. Certainly, rear-wheel drive cars can at times be a little twitchy, and oversteer can be a little difficult to save with some of these cars, and that would certainly be a thing with the Lancia. I gave it a go at cresting turn 1 flat out to see what the Lancia could do. I mean, the line was good. However, the suspension on this perhaps a little too stiff to deal with this course. Let's face it, we are asking quite a lot of the car when it comes to that opening crest. Yeah, the Lancia, we just got a little bounce on the landing, but all it takes is just that little moment of out of control, and the car is going to go off in spectacular style. So I could figure out the Lancia. I could deal with that. This section here was always going to be the tough part, with the car having a few issues on landings. And while the engine once more survived, driveline was completely snapped. Fairly spectacular roll. It was just a little too... had a few too many problems on the landings to really fly across these sections. Actually quite a neat line that time around, but it's enough to bounce it too far to the right. We go through, amazingly, 90% of the car there is fine. We just punctured 3 out of the 4 tyres. Like, all mechanically it's fine, it's working. We didn't even bend any panels. Just running across the rocks at that kind of speed, mostly sideways, punctured a large number of the tyres. I was trying different lines to find out what I could get away with. Got good speed across the crest, but then tried to get on the brakes, got a big twitch from the car. I think I locked up the rears ever so slightly and then tried to fight it for control. We were running too wide and clipped the barrier, and that is very much going to be run over. Did have to be careful with the oversteer in this vehicle. I'm going to put the power down across the dirt. I just get some wheel spin, and the back end's gone, and with the bumps already bouncing the car about a little bit, that bit of oversteer was not going to help matters as we tumble once more off of the canyon. Unfortunately, not quite making a flag out of the Lancia, but yeah, it's a pretty sorry state by the end. Again, the engine surviving. The engine's still working, but most of the rest of the car not. There was a big cartwheel from the Lancia. By sort of hugging to the left, we get away without actually getting too much airtime. That's probably a route I'm going to take with a lot of cars. However, getting some oversteer would be just too difficult to keep hold of the car, and actually dipped the inside wheel, you see there, into the dirt, into the bumps, and that tore the wheel. I don't quite know how I managed that. While I was spinning, I guess I must have caught it on something, and that tore the wheel up on the inside. The far section, exactly the same mistake I made with the ETK. I got away with it that time, bouncing my way across the dirt. Didn't quite, though, get enough turning for the next corner, and then we have a big fire going on. The first car to catch fire. I was surprised we didn't see any fires from the Covet or the ETK from the previous runs. I mean, there are some huge accidents going on here. But yeah, the 037 would be the first car to cause a large of fire. Coming around the hairpin, trying to get on the power that bit too soon, and a little bit of understeer, and we're going off. I was trying to. It was a fairly good run up until that point, and just trying to get that more and more speed out of the vehicle. I just asked too much of it, and by the time I realised what was going on, it was too late for me to save it. Another wiggle in the braking zone. I almost get away with it. Just as we clipped the barrier, I thought I was going to be okay, bouncing off the barrier and get it back in a straight line, but I was a little too aggressive on the power, and that would be the Lancia in a ditch. This one, probably the most difficult of the vehicles to get down the course. The biggest problem with it being the oversteer. Once the cars started sliding, it was very difficult to catch it. That is a general theme for rear-wheel drive cars in Beam. The likes of the Covet, if that got sideways, well, you could boot it its front-wheel drive. It'll sort itself out. Similar with the ETK, if that got unhappy, if that was sliding about, the four-wheel drive, booting it would work. But on this, if it started getting sideways, no matter what you did, it was often going to go round in a spin, and the landings of the jumps were a little on the tough side. However, I got things right. I found the speeds again. It was about 65 miles an hour. With the Lancia, you really couldn't get away with any more than that down there. It just wouldn't work. You'd take more speed than that, and it would bounce around too much. The ETK did get very lucky with its 70 miles an hour at that section around the blind hairpin. Once more, being careful. I did find that sticking to the right across the dirt was by far the best way to go for the smoothest run. The brakes in the Lancia were pretty solid when you weren't locking them up and having huge bumps in the braking zone as we get the car stopped for the hairpin. This time, making it around without understeering off the course. That was about as much oversteer as I can get away with and keep the car in the right direction. That was a big slide from the Lancia, but again, making it all work as we run down this very, very fast section, trying to keep it as well out of the bumps as I could, but you are having to be careful, having to lift, certainly not flat out in the Lancia through this area, but it is past the worst of the corners. The 037 runs towards the line and through, unfortunately, as I go on the brakes, I'll lock it up, lose control of it, and then we'll go for another. The rocks up there have claimed, and I think that might have been the same rock as well, that claimed 2 victims in all of this. As I go to roll the car over, I didn't do a very good job of grabbing the right node there. There we go, much better. Lancia back onto its wheels. The damage done around the door was from me pulling it over. We bent the chassis in that that final crash. You can see the front right wheel, sticking up in the air. Car's still working though. Car's still, I mean, apart from the radiator on the car, most of it is in okay nick, considering a sizable shunt to finish the run. Yeah, it fared okay, the Lancia. It could have been a bit more difficult, in all honesty, down this course. I'm liking the Canyon Rally stage, though. A very, very good test of these cars, and certainly a hell of an opportunity for some really rather spectacular crashes. Anyway, it is on to the times, and the ETK 800 series would go fastest to 1:38.9 will be our leader. The Lancia going home in second to 43.6. I think the Lancia perhaps not having the traction out of the corners. It's not quite as powerful as the ETK either, and a couple of scary moments on the bumps for the Lancia would explain the size of the gap. The Rally Covet not far behind that 037, 144.2. Yeah, well-suited car to this course, by far the best over the bumps here, although it is considerably underpowered against this competition. But yeah, it makes up its time through the corners. Good fun car, actually, to tackle this course. However, that is it for this video, guys. As ever, I'll put links to all of the mods that I have used in the description, so you can download them, have a go with them yourself. But that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.